Fab. Super. Okay, so thank you so much to those of you that have been completing the poll as we've been coming in. That's really great to get a little snapshot of the room. So just a big hello and a warm welcome to everybody if you've just joined us. So we are today going to be launching some new recommendations and guidance that the Foundation have developed, focusing on building sustainable provision for children who are arriving as refugees. So really great to have you all with us today. Big warm welcome. Just to flag a few of the features that we'll be using in the webinar today. So we will be using the chat function, so you can find this at the bottom of your screen. You can send a message to everyone, or you can send a direct message to a single participant. So if you've got any tech issues, then just flag that to Lizzie. She'll be my colleague in the background helping out with that. In terms of question and answers, we are unlikely to have time at the end to do question and answers today, but we will be monitoring those throughout. So do use the Q&A function. And as we go through the webinar, if you have any questions, just pop them in there. My colleague Caroline Bruce is going to be in the background. She'll be monitoring that, and Glynis and I will try to do it as well as we go through the webinar today. Should you wish to see the live transcript, you can do this by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of the screen, and that will give you a live transcript session. So without further ado, I think we will move on. So I hope everybody enjoys the webinar today. Glynis and I are going to do a little bit of a tag team affair today, but these are broadly the 4 areas that we are going to be focusing on. So I'm going to kick off by sort of introducing the guidance, tell you a little bit more sort of what we've developed, why we've developed it, and sort of a bit more of the background to it before I pass over to Glynis, who's going to look at the underpinning research behind what we've done, as well as the content and the design features of this. And I am going to finish off by briefly signposting some other useful resources and guidance within the recommendations, as well as some things that are coming up from the Bell Foundation. So let's get going. So what we've developed and why. So probably in about October last year, the Foundation brought together a group of practitioners, as well as local authority leaders and some leading experts in the space of refugee education, really to try and learn a little bit more about the current landscape for refugee funding in education, and some of the factors that might impact on how schools are using that funding, as well as some of the challenges they might face in terms of supporting the children within their schools, and to really try and start to establish what might be some of the most impactful ways in which schools and local authorities might be able to use any funding they have available to them. I think the Foundation's interest really, has come from a significant increase in demand for guidance and support and training, coming through to the Foundation in the area of sort of building sustainable provision for refugee children. We've seen a really significant increase over the last few years or so, and that's sort of really sort of highlighted the need for these recommendations, and that's what we're going to be sharing with you today. I'd like to take this opportunity just to say thank you to Schools of Sanctuary, to Refugee Education UK, to the Refugee Youth Service, as well as the Refugee Council. They have offered us some really, really valuable insights and suggestions. They've reviewed these recommendations, and really helped to make sure that it is useful, practical, and as comprehensive as it possibly can be. So just wanted to kind of flag that as we start. Also, just to let you know that whilst the guidance has been framed around sustainable uses of funding for refugee learners, the recommendations and the actions are equally applicable and relevant for those who are seeking asylum. So if schools do not have access to any available funding, there are also ways in which to access and harness resources and training that are completely free. So please don't be put off by the title. You know, it's where the focus came from, but there is definitely applicability to those learners as well. So to sort of help set the scene for some of our development of the recommendations, I thought it would be helpful and maybe interesting to share with you some insights that the Foundation has gained from our work with partners through the sort of scoping exercises that we did ahead of this development, as well as some of the research that we looked at, and you know, that really have underpinned why the Foundation felt that this was such an important piece of work. So I think firstly, as many of you will be aware, you know, schools are welcoming increased numbers of refugee children from countries such as Ukraine, Afghanistan, Hong Kong and Syria, but also many, many more on top of that. And what we've been finding is that schools are saying that they felt quite limited in terms of their prior knowledge and experience in terms of supporting these learners. And this was coming from schools who actually, in many cases, had quite a long history of welcoming learners using EAL, but were brand new to welcoming refugee arrivals and those seeking asylum. They were also sharing that they felt they had sort of limited provision and resources and systems and processes in place for supporting these children, and sort of were really on the hunt for kind of more information and support and guidance in these areas. And as I mentioned, the Foundation has seen a really significant demand in sort of guidance, CPD and training in this area. For us, I think as an organisation, it's been really good to see that this is being prioritised. It's the first time, I would say, in a long time that this has been really high on the agenda within schools, and that's really fantastic to see. I mean, the situation surrounding this is obviously not great, but you know, it is heartening to see that this is being prioritised. You know, it's right there on the agenda for school leaders. We did look a little bit at funding and the kind of funding landscape for refugee children. And what we found within this scoping exercise is that actually the information was quite sparse in terms of detailing what funding was available, who's entitled to that funding, and how it's being spent. What we saw really that different local authorities have different approaches, you know, obviously differs by region. We actually spoke to a number of schools who said that they hadn't applied for any available funding. They hadn't had the time, and they knew that the administrative hurdles and the kind of paperwork surrounding it was just so time consuming, and they just hadn't been able to kind of prioritise that within their schools. So whilst we're not able to offer solutions for all of these challenges within the guidance, we do signpost where you can get more information. We have kind of flagged key funding routes that we know of. Obviously, at the time of speaking, they may date, but you know, we have tried to kind of signpost where you can get more information. I think really as well with the recommendations, just important to kind of flag that they're really underpinned, I suppose, by this knowledge that this ethno-linguistic diversity and English as an additional language can now be regarded as a really ordinary and permanent feature of schooling, you know, in the UK. We know now that most teachers will teach to multilingual classrooms at some point in their career. And also that teaching in these multicultural, multilingual classrooms is one of the top 3 areas that teachers report that they need professional learning and professional development on. So, you know, coming out of initial teacher training and not necessarily feeling prepared to meet the needs of diverse multilingual classrooms, or not feeling that CPD within schools is enough to support them in working with those learners. And we also know that between 2013 and 2018, the percentage of teachers working in schools in England in multilingual settings has increased by 14 percentage points. So I think with this in mind, this focus on building knowledge and expertise and capacity within schools by sort of investing in training, investing in resources, you know, you'll see that come through in the recommendations that we have made. So that is pretty much it from me before I pass over to Glynis, but I am interested to know, just briefly, whether these sort of findings from our partners or the research resonate with your experiences in supporting, you know, and working with refugee children. So if you could just pop your thoughts into the chat room, it would, yeah, just be really interesting to kind of get a sense of you know, what you think about this. Yeah, I can see lots of yeses and definitelys and 100%s and yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, we did. I mean, we tried to kind of consult quite widely on this to make sure that it was, you know, yeah, that we were drawing upon, you know, the experiences of schools and the experiences of practitioners. So, I mean, it's good to hear that we're in the right area. Okay, so I'm going to stop waffling now, and I am going to pass over to Glynis, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the underpinning research in what we've developed.
Thank you, Catherine, and hello everyone. And so our first question then is why draw on research? And we know that building practice on the evidence provided by quality research has a number of benefits. So firstly, research is built on theoretical frameworks, which in turn are built on principles, and we can align the values of our work with these principles. Second, research gives us evidence about best practice and the impact and success of that practice in realizing those values and principles. And last, up-to-date research provides us with evidence in current contexts and enables us to assess with some confidence that what works in one context or type of school can be translated into comparable, similar schools. So what did we look at to inform this guidance? We drew largely on 3 bodies of research that have been conducted across the UK, each one focusing on a specific area of what refugee children need from their schools. We looked first at a UNICEF report that was compiled by Gladwell and Chetwynd and published in 2018 from the Refugee Support Network. Second, we looked at a research into schools welcoming new arrivals across the east of England by McIntyre and Abrams and published in 2021. And third, we looked at a book published on the basis of a lot of work done by a team of researchers at Cambridge and Durham universities, and that was published in 2020. So what are the key findings from this work? First, the research we looked at provided evidence about the barriers that both to access and then to remaining and thriving in education that refugee children face. Second, the research shows what they need from their schools to be able to remain and thrive, which are the 3 key concepts of safety, belonging, and opportunities for success. And last, we looked at what kind of teaching and learning, what kind of pedagogy needs to be put in place that's built on holistic assessment and in tandem with a number of agencies. And so we used these key findings as a foundation for the 7 recommendations that we've developed, and I will share those recommendations with you in a minute. But I want to just at this point, go through in a bit more detail what the research is telling us. So the UNICEF report focused on the barriers, first of all, to access. And with regard to barriers to access, the key problem is that it takes quite a significant amount of time before children have access to a school place. And the recommendations from identifying that are ideally there needs to be a lot of policy work at national government level and at guidance from local authorities, which we know is an ideal at the moment that's not in place. But at the same time, there are things schools can do, which is creating a school-wide welcome ethos and building partnerships with advocates in local settings and support workers to help overcome those barriers to access. Next, the report looked at the barriers to remaining and thriving. And there are many factors that contribute to that. The lack of support for learning English and in English, the impact on learning of trauma and dislocation that children will have experienced. There's bullying that happens at school, and the impact of poverty on children's ability to fit in socially. So again, what are the things that schools can be doing? 6 key aspects here. Firstly, providing extensive support from a committed caring adult in the school, that the child knows that person's always available. The need to adapt teaching and learning so that there is support in place for learning English and learning in English. Thirdly, providing pastoral care and mental health support, again, to address the many well-being challenges that these children face. Fourthly, the need to network beyond your school and build networks with other professionals. Fifthly, building in peer support in the form of buddies. And lastly, that's already come up in the comments you've made, training for teachers. In the second body of research that we drew on, we looked at studies of this body of research looked at studies of good practice across a number of schools and institutions in the east of England. And the findings have been contextualized in a framework that was developed by Professor Ravi Kohli, Professor of Child Welfare at Bedfordshire University. And he identified 3 key concepts for action in schools. First is the safety concept, creating a safe environment. Second is creating a school environment in which children feel they can belong. And thirdly, an environment where children can succeed academically and beyond. And this research, as with the UNICEF report, emphasized the need for best practice that is built on a holistic model of targeted multi-agency support that provides for all of children's needs, social, emotional, academic, that is all taking place within an ethos of inclusion that celebrates diversity while drawing on family and community involvement. So I just want to look at these 3 concepts in a little bit more detail. So if we look at safety, creating the safe space, this we would build on what we call an asset-based approach. And there are really 2 aspects to this asset-based approach. And first of all, then, we refer to reports from so many schools that have been welcoming new arrivals for some time about the many contributions that new arrivals make to the school by raising aspirations across the whole school community and building compassion, tolerance, broader cultural knowledge among their peers. And the second aspect of this asset-based approach recognizes that each child brings language and learning assets with them. They are multilingual, they have multiple linguistic resources or linguistic repertoire, as the researchers call it, and that can form a foundation for their learning in English as the next new language that they're learning. With regards to the belonging concept, Corley urges us to create spaces at school where we recognize the many talents and strengths of new arrivals, creating opportunities, excuse me, for them to build what he calls these webs of belonging. So what does a welcoming environment look like? There are 4 key characteristics. So it is tolerant of difference, it is respectful towards all children and their culture, it celebrates diversity, and there is an awareness in the school of what is happening in the wider world. Then onto that, the third concept, what are the factors that build success? So we know that one of the many challenges that new arrivals face is adjusting to a new school system that may be very different to what they're used to, where, for example, they may have been in single-sex classrooms They may have been in an education system that doesn't encourage them to express opinions or express ideas. And so we know that where children's past educational experiences are similar to what they experience in the UK, they will be more successful. So it's really important then that schools support children to make adjustments to new ways of learning, that schools create a space that affirms each child's cultural identity, including, very crucially, the languages that they speak. And third, that teachers have high expectations for them while making sure that there's good support in place for them in all their subjects. Then on to the third body of research, which is all about building an inclusive pedagogy. This is based on research of 4 case studies of primary and secondary schools in England that Professor Evans and a team of researchers at Cambridge and Durham universities have carried out. And they've designed a model for an inclusive pedagogy that identifies 4 key dimensions, which I'll look at now. And central to this model of inclusion, and perhaps what forms the foundation of these 4 dimensions, are teachers' inclusive attitudes. In other words, and this goes back to what I'm talking about, to what I've talked about, the asset-based approach, where teachers view the children coming into their classroom as assets in the classroom and as having assets that they bring to their learning. The second dimension, academic inclusion, rests on including children in mainstream learning from the beginning. So while there may be some cases where a child could benefit from short periods of learning on their own, the aim should always be that they access mainstream learning as soon as possible after admission and are included in all other school activities. The third dimension is linguistic inclusion, and this means building in bilingual support in all lessons and adopting strategies in which EAL learners can use all the language that they know to learn English and learn in English. And the last dimension is that new arrivals should be included in all aspects of school life. So I'm going to move now to the next section and look at how this research then was realized in this guidance document, how we put it together. So first of all, the guidance contains 7 key recommendations, and I will go through them in a minute. And we took those recommendations and mapped them onto a 4-stage chronological model called the pause model for each, the first letter of prepare, then alert, then welcome, and then support. And within each stage of that model, we've listed actions that you would need to take and resources that you can access to support your work. So let's just look then at the recommendations, and they're in no order of priority. The first one there is to assess each learner holistically. And this comes from the research that tells us that that there's enormous complexity and heterogeneity in this group of children. They'll come with very, very different experiences, school backgrounds, language, and so on. They will have a unique history and story and a unique set of assets and needs. And it means then that schools need to tailor their support programs to meet the needs of each child and the context that they find themselves in. Second, invest in human resources, because as Evans et al. Have said, teachers who work to build this inclusive space are a fundamental human resource. And the recommendations outline what key staff need to be appointed, the need for time as a resource and other resources to be allocated, and very importantly, the need for senior leadership to support the work that they do. Third is creating a welcoming school environment. And this recommendation sets out how your school can convey messages of welcome and inclusion, for example, on your website, and in the ways that you celebrate all of the languages that all your learners speak. Fourth, We recommend building a holistic plan for learning and pastoral support, so that this plan focuses on academic as well as well-being needs, so that this can take into account the extraordinary parts of each child's life, including but not only the trauma and dislocation that they've experienced, while also helping them to find what they crave, which is a life of ordinariness, to fit in, to belong with their peers. Next, we have something you will all know. All of the research for every child says that children, the impact on children's learning when their families support them. And of course, then with refugee families, support needs to address multiple issues, including around language and communication, needing to understand how schools work, how your particular school works, which may be very different from their experience from home, and communicating all those aspects in clear, regular, and using languages that families know and understand. Next recommendation is to access resources and support beyond your school, and this is where we comes into this multi-agency. So it's about building networks, and our recommendations here talk about the funding that can be accessed from local authorities, and for example, and training of learners to become translators and buddies for new arrivals. And then our last recommendation is in the important investment, and this really goes to the sustainability of the plans you put in place, teacher training. And it's important for everything, including for social integration. So I'm now going to move on to the pause model to show you how this is set out, how this works. As I've said, there are 4 stages. The prepare stage is what you would do in the weeks and days leading up to admission. Alert is what you will also do before the first day. The welcome is the first day and the days immediately afterwards, and then the support that is ongoing in the weeks and months that come after that moment. So I'm going to look now just a little bit at each of these stages. So stage 1 is all about the systems and human resources that you put in place ahead of the first day of the child's first day at school, and how you gather information. So we provide guidance on how to gather information for a learner profile, including about the languages they speak and what schooling they've had prior to coming to your school. Second, we offer advice on the need for professional interpreters for meetings with the child and their family. We provide links to resources to help you share information with the family. We set out guidelines for planning that all-important first day. We outline the key staff appointments that you can make, and we provide information about what you can access beyond your school to support your work. In the alert stage, this is about sharing a lot of that information that you've gathered before admission with all of the relevant staff who will be working with the child. Second, we advise organizing a buddy system, ideally with an empathetic learner, and ideally with somebody who speaks the same language as the new child, and possibly even has had a similar experience in the past. And then third, identify what arrangements need to be put in place for the first day. On to the welcome stage. 3 key actions. We provide guidance here on how to get your school ready physically and what your staff need to be doing. So this is things like making sure there's clear signage around the school to key places in the languages that the new arrivals know. For older children, setting aside quiet spaces where they can just retreat a bit and relax, possibly network with other children who speak the languages that they know, where they could meet with a caring adult who's their go-to person and access information. And then third, making sure that each staff member is ready and prepared to play their role on that first day. And then stage 4 is the welcome stage. this is all about putting the learning and pastoral care support that is planned. So your actions need to be built on creating a whole school language policy that is shared with all staff, so that everybody's on the same page with regards to how you're going to go about that. That language support is then in place across all subjects. Pastoral care, as we've said, is crucial for these children who will have experienced trauma. That assessment is ongoing and will help teachers set language targets and monitor progress. Fifthly, making sure that parents are kept informed about their children's progress and what is going on at school. And lastly, investing in ongoing training for all staff. So to end off, I just quickly want to talk about, give some examples, just a little sample of some of the resources that we provide links for in the guidance. So, you know, one of the recommendations, as you've seen, we urge schools to provide training for all staff on how to build an inclusive pedagogy. So our guidance includes examples of training, and here's an example of a course that's coming up that the Bell Foundation will be running in May. That is advertised on our website. And we also share other resources for assessing new arrivals, for example, how to draw up a learner profile, how to base learning support programs on the assessment that you get. And lastly, we have a wealth of resources, links to a wealth of resources for classroom strategies for EAL teaching, and finally you that are in multiple languages for information that can be shared with families. So I will thank you, and hand back to Catherine at this point.
Thank you so much, Glynis. That's fab. So I am just sort of, before we finish off today, it's a slightly shorter webinar than we would normally do, but it has been very much to kind of introduce you to the guidance, and just to kind of flag some of the key areas and just make you aware of, you know, what we've developed, how we've developed, and, you know, and why we've organized it in the way we have, just to make it a little easier for you to navigate. So just to flag some other useful areas that may be of interest to you, within the guidance itself, we've consolidated all the resources and all the suggestions and links to training that we make. So you'll find this on pages 22 to 25, and we sort of consolidated under these headings. So you've got information about sort of training and courses, resources specifically for school staff, as well as resources specifically around welcome. You've got broader sort of teaching resources, as well as pastoral care resources, things around family support, assessment, as well as networking. So we just wanted to make sure that this might be easy for you if you just want to sort of quick access. Hopefully that's at the end for you, and you know that will make it a little easier for you to kind of navigate the document. Glynis has already talked extensively about the underpinning research behind you know, what we've developed, but I just want to take this opportunity again to share this with you, and just to sort of make recommendations. If you fancy some light time reading, we would strongly recommend and encourage you to check out these authors that we have here in terms of the research. I know that Caroline has shared those links with you in the chat already, but they will be available via the recording when we share this with you after the webinar today. So just a couple of things that I wanted to highlight. In terms of how you access the guidance, so this is available now on the Foundation's website. So if you go to just the Foundation's landing page, got the link there, and at the minute there's a banner right at the top of the screen, and if you click on that banner it will take you directly to the recommendations, and you can download them from there. please do get in touch if you have any questions, specific questions about the guidance, or if you'd like to provide us with some specific feedback on them. Really opening to hear from people. We want this to be the best it can possibly be and get it out there as widely as we possibly can. So please do give us a shout if you have anything in particular to mention about the guidance and the recommendations. Just a couple of things that are coming up from the foundation. I just wanted to let you know that we are working with Refugee Education UK to find out a little bit more about education access and provision for refugee and asylum seeking adolescents who arrive late into the school system. So we're really trying to look at getting a better understanding of the practices that promote and maybe hinder as well academic and well-being outcomes for these learners, with a particular focus on those from 13 to 18. So if you have experience with working with or supporting refugee and asylum seeking adolescents who are coming in as late arrivals, there will, from the 17th of March, so in a few days' time, be a survey that will be available via the link that I'm showing on the screen now. I think Caroline will pop that in the chat as well. And yeah, survey for practitioners to try and kind of seek to get some more information to learn a little bit more about this space. If you have any thoughts or any questions about this research, or you want to share something in a bit more depth, REK have said that they'd love to hear from you. So please do get in touch with them. And I've put the email address there as well. Just a couple of things from the foundation. So on the 18th of April, we are going to be running a course on understanding language for learning in the multilingual classroom. So this particular course is focused, or it's for teachers, teaching assistants, coordinators. It's very much focused on increasing understanding around particular features of language, English language, that has been shown to be particularly problematic for learners using EAL. The second course that I'd be keen to flag would be, it's starting on the 2nd of May, is on running, so it's on supporting new arrivals who use EAL. So this one is for primary and secondary school staff who might be looking for guidance and suggestions and resources for supporting newly arrived pupils, including those who are refugees or seeking asylum. So it would work really well alongside the guidance that we're sharing. You'll see many of the themes that Glynis has touched upon today within that course, and it probably will give you an opportunity to look at them in slightly more depth. So yeah, please do go and check that out. We've also got another couple of courses. So we're doing leading a whole school strategy on the 6th of June, as well as embedding a language for learning on the 13th of June. So please go and check those out on the Bell Foundation website. I think that is pretty much everything. So I'm going to round up now, but just before we close the webinar, I just wanted to remind you that there will be a survey that will appear as soon as the webinar closes, and we'd be really grateful if you could take the time to complete this. Feedback is so important in terms of informing, what we do, what we prioritize within these sessions. So yeah, it would be great if you could make the time to do that today. We will be sharing the video recording of this via so we'll share this with an email with you tomorrow with a link to the recording of the webinar, and the survey will be in there as well. So if you missed it today, it will be in the link again tomorrow. So another opportunity. And yeah, I think that is pretty much everything. So I just want to say thank you so much for attending today, and for giving your time. We know that you're all very busy people. It's great to see so many of you here. As I said, it's really fantastic. This is an area that's been prioritised within schools and local authorities, and yeah, we're just really heartened to so much engagement and participation in this. So thank you so much for attending the webinar. Have a lovely evening, and we're going to stop recording now, and I'm going to bring an end to the video. So take care. Bye-bye.